I don't know why stories like this always seem to find me. Maybe it's because I grew up in a house where nothing dramatic ever happened, at least nothing that I could see. My parents were quiet people, predictable, almost boring. So whenever someone shares a story that shakes the foundations of their entire life, it hits me differently. It reminds me that even the most ordinary homes can hide something extraordinary, or terrifying. That's exactly what happened to him, this guy whose story stayed with me long after he told it. And honestly, even now, retelling it makes me feel that strange weight in my chest, the kind you get when you realize a family isn't what it pretends to be. He grew up believing he knew his family, the same way we all do. Small town, simple life, the kind of childhood people describe as normal even if they can't remember half of it. He wasn't the type who questioned things. He wasn't suspicious or paranoid or overly curious. He trusted the people around him. Sometimes I think that's exactly the kind of person who gets hit hardest when the truth finally finds them. His name was Ethan. And if you met him, you wouldn't think he carried anything heavy. He had that calm presence, the kind that makes you feel like he's listening even when you're not saying much. I met people like him before, quiet, grounded, paying attention to the small things most of us ignore. He used to say he wasn't special, but I never believed that. Usually, people who say that are hiding something, even if they don't realize it themselves. His childhood memories were blurry in some places and sharp in others, like someone took scissors to the timeline and glued the pieces back together wrong. He couldn't explain it, but he always felt a little disconnected from his own story, like he was watching someone else's life instead of living his. That feeling never bothered him enough to question anything, until the day everything started to unravel. It began with something small. It always does. One morning, he was looking for an old photo album for a school project. His mother told him it was in the attic, in a box labeled 1997. The kind of box every family has, dusty, full of things no one touches anymore. When he climbed the stairs and pulled the string to turn on the light, he didn't expect to feel anything strange. But the moment that dim bulb flickered to life, something shifted in him. He said it felt like walking into memory before fully remembering it, a weird déjà vu he couldn't place. I get that feeling sometimes too, when I hear a specific song from my childhood or smell something that reminds me of a place I forgot existed. But for him, it wasn't nostalgic. It was wrong. He found the box exactly where his mother said it would be, but it didn't look like it had been touched in years. The lid was stiff, and when he opened it, a cloud of dust rose into the air. Inside, instead of photos and birthday cards and little kid drawings, he found something else. A stack of documents tied with a faded red ribbon, and under them, a small metal container with a latch. Not the kind of thing that belongs in a family memory box. He told me that when he touched the metal container, his hand shook. And he wasn't the kind of person who shakes easily. He sat down on the floor right there in the attic, crossed his legs like a child, and stared at the box for a long moment. He said it felt like the air around him got colder, heavier. I remember the way he looked when he told me that, like he was reliving the exact moment, step by step. He unclasped the latch. It made a sound like something protesting after years of being shut. Inside, wrapped carefully in yellowed paper, was a key. Not a house key, not a car key. It looked older, heavier, almost antique. Attached to it was a small tag with a handwritten date, June 8, 2005. He didn't recognize the date. It wasn't anyone's birthday. It wasn't a holiday. It wasn't a day he remembered at all. But something about it made him uneasy. He turned the key over in his hand and noticed it had a faint scratch on one side, like it had been used many times before. He told me that, at that moment, he felt this strange wave of instinct, like he should put everything back exactly where he found it and leave the attic immediately. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, especially when it mixes with the feeling that something in your life isn't adding up. So instead of leaving, he dug deeper. He opened the stack of documents next. They weren't school forms or family records. They were official-looking papers with government seals, dates, signatures. Some were birth records. Some were hospital forms. One of them caught his eye, a certificate with his mother's name on it, and the word patient. He froze. It took him a few seconds to process what he was looking at. The certificate wasn't from a regular hospital. It was from a psychiatric facility 2 towns over. The date on it was the same date written on the key. Suddenly the attic felt too small, too hot. He remembered standing up, pacing in circles, trying to make sense of it. He hadn't known his mother was ever hospitalized. No one ever mentioned it. His family always acted like nothing out of the ordinary had ever happened. And that's when he realized something else. He didn't have a single memory of his mother from that year. Not one. When he told me this part, he laughed softly, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh you let out when you're trying not to panic. I remember the way his eyes shifted, as if he was looking past me, back into the memory. He wanted to understand what the documents meant, but the more he read, the less sense they made. Some papers were torn, others deliberately blacked out. It looked like someone tried to hide something but didn't finish the job. There were notes written in the margins, messy handwriting, rushed, like someone scribbling in fear or urgency. He found a name repeated several times, a name he didn't recognize. Maria. Next to it, in one document, someone had written the words, "She can't know." At that point, I remember leaning forward, feeling the same chill he must have felt. Stories do that sometimes, they pull you in so deeply that you forget you weren't there. I could almost picture him standing alone in the attic, folding papers that were never meant to be found, realizing that everything he thought he understood about his family might have been a lie. He took the key, the documents, and the metal box downstairs. His mother was in the kitchen, humming softly while making tea. He hesitated at the bottom of the stairs, unsure whether to confront her right away or pretend he hadn't seen anything. He said her humming suddenly sounded unfamiliar, like a sound from someone he didn't really know. He held the key behind his back and cleared his throat. When she looked up at him, he noticed something he'd never seen before, a flicker of fear in her eyes. It was quick, almost unnoticeable. But he saw it. And once you see fear in someone you love, you can't unsee it. He asked her casually about the date on the tag. He said he didn't mention the documents or the attic yet, just wanted to see her reaction. And her reaction told him everything. She froze. The spoon slipped from her hand and clattered onto the counter. She whispered, "Where did you hear that date?" Not, "Why do you ask?" Not, "What about it?" But, "Where did you hear it?" That was the moment he knew something was terribly wrong. He told her he found an old key in the attic, and before he could say anything else, she reached out and grabbed his wrist, tight, almost painful. Her breath was shaky, her eyes glossy. She said, "Put it back. Please. Put it back and forget you saw it." I felt my stomach twist hearing that. You don't plead like that over something meaningless. You only plead when the truth is something that can destroy a person. But curiosity, once it starts, it doesn't stop. He asked her what the date meant. Instead of answering, she told him to sit. She looked exhausted, like the weight of the conversation was already too heavy. And then she said something that made his heart drop. "You were never supposed to know." He didn't understand. He waited for her to explain, but all she did was cry softly into her hands. She was shaking. That sight alone terrified him, because his mother was never emotional. She was the strong, composed type. Seeing her break frightened him more than the documents did. She wouldn't say anything else. She begged him not to ask, not to dig, not to open that door. She used those exact words. That door. And when she said it, he realized something chilling. The key he found wasn't just symbolic. It opened something real. Something hidden. She made him promise he would leave it alone. But promises made under fear don't hold. He nodded, but he didn't mean it. That night, he couldn't sleep. His mind kept replaying the attic, the documents, the date, his mother's tears. He felt betrayed, confused, angry, afraid. He said he kept asking himself why his own mother would hide something so big from him. Why she would pretend everything was fine. Why she would look at him with fear instead of trust. I've had nights like that too, where thoughts pile up until they feel like a weight on your chest. You stare at the ceiling, replaying conversations, searching for answers in memories that suddenly look different. And the worst part is the silence, the world sleeping while you're wide awake, trapped in uncertainty. The next morning, he decided he needed to know the truth. Not because he wanted to, but because once you feel a crack in your reality, you can't unfeel it. He took the key, put it in his pocket, and went back to the attic. This time, he wasn't looking for documents. He was looking for whatever the key unlocked. He searched every corner, every box, every piece of old furniture. For a while, nothing made sense. Then he noticed something odd. The floorboards near the back wall looked slightly different. Newer. Less worn. He knelt down and knocked on them. Hollow. He moved boxes out of the way, revealing a small metal latch built into the floor. Almost invisible unless you knew where to look. His breath caught. His heart raced. This was it. Whatever the key was meant for, it was under those boards. He inserted the key. It fit perfectly. And just before he turned it, he told me something I'll never forget. He said he felt two emotions at once, fear and relief. Fear of what he was about to discover, and relief that the uncertainty was finally ending. He turned the key. The lock clicked. The floor shifted. And underneath, in the darkness, something waited, something his family had hidden for almost his entire life. Something that would change everything. When he told me this part, I remember leaning in closer, without even noticing. Stories do that, they pull you. And if you're still listening right now, trust me, the next part is where things truly begin to unravel. And he had no idea that the truth he was about to uncover wasn't just a secret, it was a revelation that would destroy everything he thought he knew about who he was, where he came from, and what his family had done to keep him in the dark. He said the air beneath the floor felt colder than it should have, like the kind of cold that doesn't come from temperature, but from memories that shouldn't exist. When he lifted the panel completely, a rush of unfamiliar smells rose from below. Old wood. Dust. Something metallic. And beneath all of it, a faint scent he couldn't place. One that made his stomach twist. He used his phone's flashlight and pointed it downward. It revealed a narrow staircase carved into the foundation of the house. Not a modern staircase, this looked older than the house itself. Rough steps, uneven edges, walls that seemed hand-dug, not professionally built. It was the kind of place you'd expect to find in a thriller movie, not under the floorboards of a suburban home. He hesitated. Anyone would. He told me he stood there for at least 2 minutes, arguing with himself silently. Curiosity on one side, fear on the other. And fear was winning until he remembered the look in his mother's eyes the day before. That specific kind of fear people show only when there's something life-altering at stake. That fear pushed him forward. He descended the stairs slowly. Each creak of wood echoed like a warning. His hand brushed against the dirt walls as he walked downward, and he could feel tiny rocks crumble under his touch. This wasn't supposed to be here. His house was barely 25 years old. But this? This looked like it had been here for decades, maybe longer. At the bottom of the stairs was a single wooden door. Plain, old, with a rusty knob. No lock. No numbers. No signs. But carved into the wood was a faint marking, something he couldn't fully interpret. Not a word, not a symbol he recognized. Just a curved line intersecting another, like someone scratched it in haste. His heart hammered against his ribs. His hand shook as he reached for the knob, but he turned it anyway. And when the door creaked open, the smell hit him immediately, the same metallic scent from above but stronger, sharper. Inside the room was darkness so thick his flashlight barely cut through it. Dust particles floated like drifting snow as he stepped inside. The room wasn't large, maybe the size of a walk-in closet, but what was inside felt impossibly heavy. Against the far wall was a wooden chair. On it rested a stack of old notebooks, each bound with twine. Beside the chair was a small metal cabinet with a single drawer. And in the corner, something he couldn't understand. A crib. Not a new one, a decades-old wooden crib, the paint chipped, one leg slightly shorter than the others. A thin, torn blanket lay inside, like someone abandoned it long ago. His throat tightened. He said an instinctive fear washed over him, not because the crib itself was frightening, but because it hinted at something far bigger. Something human. Something hidden. He approached the notebooks first because they felt like the least terrifying option. When he lifted the top one, dust puffed into the air. He blew gently on the cover and saw that a name had been written on it in faded ink. Maria. The same name from the documents upstairs. He untied the twine and opened the first page. The handwriting was messy, rushed, filled with loops and scratches. And the first line wasn't what he expected at all. She cries every night. Even when I hold her. He flipped to the second page. They said she might forget. They said children forget pain. But I don't think she will. Not this time. He felt a tremor run through his hands, so he put the notebook down for a moment, inhaling shakily. The air felt thinner here, almost suffocating. He opened the second notebook. June 8, 2005. They took her again. I told them she needs me. I screamed. I begged. They don't care. They say it's for her own good. But it's not. It's not. She's just a child. He read the date twice. The same date written on the key. His pulse quickened. He flipped more pages, each one more frantic, more heartbreaking. Mentions of nighttime screams, locked doors, unfamiliar men in white coats. Mentions of being separated again and again. And then something else. Mentions of him. Not by name. But by description. The boy doesn't remember. They made sure he wouldn't. He froze. The boy. He closed the notebook, hands trembling violently now. His breath came out uneven, like each inhale hurt. He said that at that moment, it felt like the ground shifted beneath him. Like the truth was pressing into his lungs. He looked at the metal cabinet next. The drawer was stiff, resisting his pull, but eventually it gave way with a harsh screech. Inside was a single object wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it slowly, his hands moving as though they weren't entirely his own. Inside was a photograph. A woman holding a newborn baby. Her face was bruised, swollen, but her eyes looked full of something indescribable. Love mixed with terror. On the back of the photograph was a handwritten note. Maria and her son. Do not separate. But they had been separated. He knew that now. He kept staring at the woman's face. She didn't look like his mother. Not even close. But something about the eyes, something about the shape of her jaw, looked familiar. Familiar enough to make him feel dizzy. He turned the picture toward the dim light again. For a moment, he thought the baby's face looked like his. But infants all look somewhat similar, he told himself. He needed more proof. He dug further inside the drawer. More papers. More photos. Hospital records. Letters. A birth certificate. He pulled out the certificate with shaky hands. His heart stopped. His name was on it. But the mother's name wasn't the woman who raised him. It was Maria. His entire body felt numb. His breath hitched. He said the room around him began to blur, like he was submerged underwater. He tried to read the certificate again, thinking maybe he misread it. But the letters didn't change. He wasn't who he thought he was. And the woman who raised him, she wasn't his mother. Not by blood. He stumbled backward, hitting the crib behind him. The impact made it creak loudly, startling him. He turned toward it and saw something he hadn't noticed before. Carved into the back panel of the wooden crib were two initials. M.S. Maria Santos. The woman whose notebooks lay on the chair. The woman in the photo. His real mother. His knees gave out, and he sat on the dusty floor, the documents spilling around him like scattered memories. He said he didn't cry at first, shock made him numb. But then something broke inside him, and the tears came uncontrollably. He wasn't crying for the truth itself. He was crying for the years he'd lost. The years stolen from his real mother. The years buried beneath lies. He sat in the darkness until his phone's battery started to die. Then he forced himself to stand. His legs felt weak, like they didn't want to carry him anymore. But he needed answers. And there was only one person who could give them to him. His mother. Or rather, the woman he had believed was his mother. He climbed the stairs with heavy steps and emerged back into the attic. The light felt wrong, too bright after the basement's darkness. He put the floorboard back quickly and stumbled down the attic stairs, breathing heavily. He found her in the living room, sitting on the couch with her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. As soon as she saw him, dusty, shaken, holding the birth certificate, she understood. She closed her eyes. And whispered, "I told you not to open it." He demanded answers. His voice cracked, but he didn't care. He asked who Maria was. Why there was a birth certificate with her name on it. Why there were notebooks, a crib, a room hidden beneath their house. She didn't speak at first. She just stared at her trembling hands. He yelled louder. She finally looked up at him, tears forming. "I didn't steal you," she whispered. "I saved you." He didn't understand. He backed away from her, confused, angry, hurt. Saved him? From what? From whom? From Maria? From his real mother? The woman he saw bruised and terrified in the photograph? His mother, or the woman who raised him, told him to sit. For once, she didn't ask. She told. Her voice was soft, but the weight in it was heavy. Then she told him everything. Maria had been her sister. That alone shattered something in him. His aunt. The woman who gave birth to him, had been his aunt. She told him Maria was fragile, unstable, struggling with severe psychological trauma long before he was born. She had been in and out of psychiatric facilities, trying to recover from a violent past. A past involving a man who disappeared before Ethan was born. A man who hurt her so deeply she never fully recovered. When Ethan was born, Maria was not well. She refused help. She refused medication. She refused to let anyone touch the baby. She spiraled. She refused sleep. Refused food. She screamed at night, convinced something was coming for her child. It reached a breaking point on June 8, 2005. The same date on the key. Maria had a breakdown and tried to flee the hospital with Ethan in her arms. She believed someone was trying to take her baby away. She ran barefoot into the woods behind the facility, clutching him so tightly he had bruises for days. When the staff found her, she was hysterical. She was admitted involuntarily. Ethan, only months old, was placed temporarily in the care of his aunt, who later became the woman he believed was his mother. Maria visited for a while. Until she didn't. One night, she vanished. The police searched, but she was never found. Some believed she ran away. Others believed she harmed herself. Others whispered she might still be alive somewhere. But no one knew. And the notebooks? They were her final months documented. Her unraveling mind. Her fears. Her love for him. Her desperation. Her warnings. He listened, shaking, head spinning. He didn't know what to believe. Part of him wanted to run. Part of him wanted to scream. Part of him wanted to believe the woman in front of him. Part of him wanted to deny it all. She told him the room under the house wasn't theirs originally. The house had been built over an older property. The hidden room existed long before they moved in. Maria found it one day during one of her episodes and became obsessed with it. She hid things there, letters, notebooks, symbols she carved into the wood. After she disappeared, they locked it away. They kept it buried to protect him. Or so she said. He didn't know if that was true or just a convenient explanation. He asked why she never told him. She said, "Because you were finally safe." He told me that sentence stayed with him more than anything else. Because safety shouldn't require lies. Safety shouldn't require hiding someone's origin story. He left the house that night. He needed air. Space. Clarity. He walked around town aimlessly, his head full of fragmented memories that suddenly felt like clues. Certain things made sense now, his mother's overprotectiveness, the missing photos, the gaps in his childhood memories, the strange way certain family members looked at him sometimes with pity instead of fondness. He returned home hours later. His mother was sitting in the same spot, still waiting, eyes red from crying. And then something unexpected happened. He sat beside her. Not because he forgave her. Not because he understood. But because part of him realized something important: every version of his story hurt someone. And the truth, no matter how painful, was better than a life built on silence. The next weeks were messy, emotional, full of arguments, apologies, confusion. He sought records from the hospital. He asked neighbors old enough to remember. He dug deeper. Some stories aligned. Some contradicted. Some made everything murkier. But one thing remained constant. He had two mothers. One who gave him life. And one who saved it. And both stories shaped him. The last time he told me this, he said he still didn't know if he forgave everything. But he knew one thing for sure: discovering the secret didn't destroy him. It rebuilt him. Piece by piece. Truth by truth. And when I asked him what he would say if Maria were alive, if she somehow heard him, he said, "I'd tell her I'm okay. And that she didn't fail me." And I think, maybe that was the closure he needed all along. Sometimes, family isn't defined by who shares your blood. Sometimes, it's defined by who stays. Who protects. Who tries, even imperfectly, to give you a life better than the one you started with. And maybe that's why stories like his stay with me. Because they remind me that the truth isn't always clean. It's messy, complicated, filled with fear and love and mistakes. But it's still the truth. And he finally has his. Stories like this remind me why people come to channels like mine. Not for perfection, but for honesty, the kind that makes you look at your own life differently. If you're still listening right now, thank you for staying with me through something as heavy and human as this. And if you've ever felt like your past is a puzzle with missing pieces, believe me, you're not alone. Sometimes the answers we fear the most are the ones that set us free. If you want more stories like this, stay close. I've got plenty to tell.